So today we have a very special guest with us and a dear friend, I would add. Shirin Taber is the founder and director of Empower Women Media. She's a media producer. She's also the author of the book Muslims Next Door, and has done extensive work across the Middle East, working on the intersection between gender equality and freedom of religion or belief. I could go on, but let me just say that she's been assisting multiple initiatives in media, specifically focusing on religious freedom, partnering with the Religious Freedom in Business Foundation, the Earth Summit. As I mentioned, she started initiatives in Pakistan and several other countries in the Middle East. She's been highlighted in the LA Times, Detroit Free Press, Fox News, Christianity Today, New York Times. We are truly lucky to have Shirin with us. So I will turn the time over to her, and we'll focus on the amazing work that she's doing and gender equality and Forbes. So Shirin, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so happy you're all here. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shirin Taber. I'll actually start a little slide deck here in a minute, but I wanted to thank you so much for making the time to join us and to learn about how you can use media to advance religious freedom around the world. And so the plan today is that we'll go through a very quick slide deck just to kind of give you the history and the origin of why we do what we do. And then we want to show you 2 sample films. Hopefully they'll work. You know how Wi-Fi is. Just to see the kinds of films we produce and why we do them, and our angle on sharing religious freedom stories, because there's a lot of different ways to share religious freedom stories. And then finally, we'll talk about the film competition. If you would like to join us in that, or if you know someone, maybe you don't feel like you can do it, but you can pass this information on to others. And then, questions, whatever you want to do today, I'm open to that. I have a full hour. I don't know, Rachel, how much time you were thinking, but is that fine? Yeah, and we can go less if we're done, we're done. So good. So let's see if I can do the screen share. Here we go. Can you see that? Yes, great. Okay, so we are moving forward with Live What You Believe, which is kind of how we're branding ourselves. So even though you hear Empower Women Media, that's kind of vague. And that can be limiting for some people because we have the word woman in there also. And so as a network, we are Empower Women Media, and we're a group of women who voluntarily produce media content, everything from short films, social media, podcasts, print, digital strategies. So that's kind of our umbrella, but the brand or the idea that we lead with is this idea of live what you believe. And as a result of that, we've produced films and an e-course and different things that I'm going to lead us through now to share more with you. So who am I? I always think it's good to let people know who we are, to build trust, and to kind of show that we've walked a long road to get to this place, because to teach about religious freedom or to be a spokesperson, it's a really sensitive subject, and a lot of people are uncomfortable with it. They're not sure. For example, I wanted to host a media training in Los Angeles last year at a studio, and I contacted the studio and I said, we want to rent this space, want to bring in about 80 women to do a workshop. And I had gotten a referral from a friend. And the gentleman paused. I said, yeah, we want to talk about religious freedom and show some films that we've created. And this very normal American looking person, whatever that means, said, religious freedom? What do you mean by that? Like, I like religious freedom for me, but I don't know about extending that to others. Like, I'm kind of uncomfortable with that. And I was like, that was interesting for me to hear that. Like, I thought in America, we all embraced that. But for him, I realized that religious freedom was kind of a tricky subject and a little scary. So I like to start with my story to explain why I'm so passionate about religious freedom. And that's that I grew up in a multicultural home. I have a Muslim father and a Christian mother. And my parents met here in Southern California. My dad was a student. He fell in love with my mom, who was a California blonde. And somehow they merged these lives together. Now, it wasn't easy. It was really difficult. So if any of you have grown up in mixed homes, it's not easy. But somehow we navigated it. And I really attribute it to my dad, because having a Muslim heritage, he could have taken a different approach to raising us as children or how he treated my mom, but he was the first person to teach me about religious freedom. He and my mom had these conversations before they got married, and my mom had requested that we raise the kids would be raised with her faith, which is interesting, and that he would demonstrate his faith in the home through family and hospitality and service. And so somehow they made this arrangement. And so when my dad passed away a few years ago, I wrote an article for the NewYorkTimes.com, and the editor said, Shirin, we want to better understand how did you get so excited about religious freedom? And I realized in a moment that the greatest gift my dad ever gave me was religious freedom, because he allowed me to grow up in a home where I could explore and learn and study different perspectives and theology and come to my own decision. And he was always very positive and engaging. And so I realized we can do this. Like, if we could do it in our home, how much more we can do it in our society and around the world. And again, it wasn't easy. There were some heated conversations, but somehow we just continued to focus on our relationship as a family and honored each other in our different journeys spiritually. So we're kind of, my brothers and I are all kind of, have different approaches and ways that we express our faith. I have relatives that have no faith, even though they were born in the Middle East and came from Muslim homes. So my point today is that, understanding your own story is a great place to have these conversations and to create religious freedom media and tools. And people are really touched by that. I've had some people in the past that said, I'm kind of sad to hear that you're not Muslim like your dad. And then as I told them my story, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So rather than feeling offended that I didn't have the exact perspective that they had, we were able to work through it and negotiate that. And we really became deeper in our friendships. So I hope that inspires you, that today, maybe the one big idea you take from this is unpack your own story and how does religious freedom relate to that as you approach others in a humane and in a loving way. So here's my biography. There's not much to really repeat, but I do have 2 master's degrees that I recently finished up really studying the idea of the intersection of religious freedom and women's empowerment. I looked at theology, I did case studies in North Africa, and the big question was, how can we train women as religious freedom advocates using digital media strategies? So we did a ton of interviews, and we really tried to uncover what were contextualized ways for us to communicate the benefits of religious freedom, and not just kind of coming up with these ideas ourselves, but going and asking women on the field and asking leaders on the field, what do you think are some of the best strategies? So as a result of the master's degrees, that's how we uncovered the tools that we're using now. We didn't just make up these ideas. We carefully vetted these ideas. We tested them. We've done pilot programs. And as a result, these are the tools we have now. And what's exciting is we're getting access to women and leaders at the highest levels around the world who are saying, wow, this is really innovative. This is something new. And if it's working, we want to join you and we want to showcase it. So let's move on to, let's see here. Apologize for that. So we started in 2013 as a network to equip women as advocates around the world. We use the power of storytelling to train students and professionals as religious freedom media advocates. And we always make sure people know that, we're media advocates. We're doing it through the power of storytelling and digital tools. And our goal is to keep the door open for religious freedom around the world. As you know, there are a lot of restrictions and a lot of doors are closing. Article 18 is the foundation for everything we do. So when people create content, we kind of run it through this lens. You know, does it jive with Article 18? If it doesn't, if someone's talking about, you know, something different like climate change or human trafficking or, you know, gender issues, those are great. People can be, you know, promote those issues, but we don't as a network. We're really focused on this article and this lens of looking at all of our projects and content. A lot of this is familiar to you. I'm sure, you know, that 80% of the world has restrictions on religious freedom, and women and minorities often suffer the most. That's a big deal for us. So we try to, again, make sure that our content represents women and minorities. And by minorities, we mean if you're living in a country where one religion is the state religion or the majority religion, then the minority people would be, you know, the smaller groups of people that are perhaps being discriminated or left on, you know, the fringes. And then the solution for us was, as we brought women together in our network, we usually meet 2 or 3 times a year. We'll have an event where we bring multiple women media producers or women who are interested in media together. So here's a photo of some women from Iran. And we will brainstorm. We'll talk about what are different ways that we can get our message out. We will showcase other films that women have done. And so as a result of that, we came up with this Live What You Believe campaign. And it's so exciting because this phrase, I don't know why, but Live What You Believe has opened so many doors for us. People seem to get it. They're like, that makes sense. I mean, ultimately, we want people to be able to live what you believe. So that's opened a lot of doors with leaders around the world to explain what religious freedom is. Our output, some of our goals for this year is we have our e-course, we have our film competition, and now we have a fellowship. So for our religious freedom e-course, it's called Live What You Believe. We've already registered 3,000 students in the past year to this e-course, which is phenomenal because we were hoping for 1,000. We thought, wow, our faith is strong enough for 1,000 students, but we actually have already 3,000 students and we're on our way to 5,000. So it's definitely resonating with young people between the ages of like 18 to 35. Our e-course and our tools. We want to equip 250 female media advocates. We do that through our fellowships and workshops. Even you today would be considered one of, if you're a female, you would be considered one of those. And then we want to equip 1,000 NGO and faith leaders through our tools. And we're on track for that also. So what are some of our needs? We've just put it out there. If you or someone are interested in ever participating with us, we're looking to recruit 10 social media marketers and influencers. And the reason why is we found that to get our content out, we really need like very dedicated, only a few hours a week where people are actually promoting our films and our e-courses. And so there's a girl in Pakistan, her name is Aisha, and she committed for, I think, 6 weeks to like really focus on being a social marketer for us as an intern. And she was able to bring in 1,000 new students to our course. So we just see the positives that she's on LinkedIn and Instagram. And so, you know, so we just want to see more of that. We also want to challenge people to lead our workshops, which typically only take about 2 hours, create new films, and yes, to have more screenings and events. So that's our little presentation for the who we are and what we do. So I hope that was helpful to you. But today I want to talk to you about our approach in sharing religious freedom content. And we, through the influence of Dr. Brian Grimm, he leads the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation. He always takes a positive approach in sharing about religious freedom. And he says, you know, there's a lot of organizations out there that are sharing the really tough stuff, the persecution stories, the blasphemy stories, people who are in prison and tortured. And that is so important. And there are people who are very dedicated to doing that, like groups like Voice of the Martyrs or Open Doors or the IRF Roundtable. But what we found was that people don't really change when they hear bad stories. They like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's kind of like 9/11, like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. Or, you know, they hear about ISIS or they hear about, you know, a war, and they're like, oh, that's so difficult. But they don't really, most people don't really, it doesn't shift their hearts to do anything. So Brian's approach was to actually share positive stories where religious freedom is working. And that when people see actual examples of where it's working, then they're like, oh, well, I could do that too. Oh, I could implement that strategy at work, or I could do that on campus with some students. You're giving them positive examples of where religious freedom is actually working. And so for us, that strategy is working. So we need both, right? We need people who are calling out the religious freedom violations and abuse, but we also need innovators and tool makers and programs that are actually teaching people how to create religious freedom, how to build religious freedom around the world. So that's why we do what we do. I wanted to take a minute and ask if there's any burning questions right now, because if not, I've been talking a lot. Are there any thoughts or questions about what we're doing or approach? You guys are quiet. Yeah, that's fine. Well, so maybe what we'll do now is show you what we do rather than just talking about it. When you're a good storyteller, you don't just talk, you show, right? You don't just tell, you show. And so that's why we create these little short films. Our films are only 3 to 4 minutes each because we feel like they're easier to use on social media. People have the time, 2 to 3 minutes to watch a short film. And then if we use them at advocacy events or let's say at the roundtable events, people are able to watch a 3-minute film and then use that to lecture or give a talk, or it's a great segue in between speakers or training. So we just create 3 to 4 minute films. So let's see if we can show a film as an example. It's called The Long Road to Freedom. And I think Rachel's going to try to set that up for us. This film was produced by Maria Goodbrake. She's originally from Afghanistan. She came to the US as a refugee. She has like a Cinderella story. She ended up marrying a very successful businessman, and together they started her foundation. It's called Global FC. And she takes all of this experience she had to not only serve the refugee community in Kansas City. She has soccer clubs and education training and tutoring and coaching and mentoring that she does for her refugee community, but she also supports religious freedom. Her point is, you know, how can we welcome refugees if we don't allow for religious freedom in our country? If we're trying to close, you know, our borders to people who are desperately coming here because of religious violations, you know, maybe back home they're being persecuted or even killed. She's a real advocate of keeping those doors open to make sure that people who are experiencing religious freedom around the world, that they have a safe community, and she's actually creating structures to welcome them. So this is her film. It's meant to inspire you to see where religious freedom is working. So let's see if it works, the film.
My family fled Afghanistan as war ravaged our country. Now, as an Afghan American, I reflect back on my family's journey to the West in hope of new life and new opportunities and freedom.
Today, as a business owner and a nonprofit director in Kansas City, we support refugees and promote freedom of belief. Together, we provide sports, education, and mentoring programming that bridges diverse cultures, forming just communities where all are free to be fully known and fully loved in pursuit of their God-given potential.
Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights advocates that everyone has the freedom and the right to the freedom of thought, religion, and belief. Yet almost 80% of the world population lives in high restricted areas on freedom of religion and belief. So we are facing an epidemic of persecution worldwide like never before. The conversation about religious freedom is not restricted to policy lawmakers and global advocates. It's all our responsibility. It's in all areas of society. When I look back into where I've come from, in the country that I am from in Afghanistan, and I see the women there who are absolutely restricted from the freedom of thought, the freedom of religion, the freedom of belief. And I think about the opportunities that I have, and I think that it's important that all of us, not just for those who live back in the persecuted world, but as a generation, to continue these dialogues about religious freedom, because it is all of our responsibilities. And so today I look for tangible ways that we can use our business platform to be able to assist those on the margins, the most vulnerable in our communities. And that's when I met Abdi, a young Somali boy who has come from the persecuted world and who now calls America home.
Hi, my name is Abdi Kadir Hirsi. I'm from Somalia. I didn't have much education in those years in the refugee camp. I'm grateful for my education here, my new home for 3 years. Family, education, community, and soccer, these are the things that important to me. They show me who I am and where I wanted to go. I came to America as a refugee, but now I'm Somali American.
For the nonprofit that I run, Global FC, we work to advocate and support children who come from all over the world, where because of lack of religious freedom and belief, and the persecution and the intolerance, war, which has forced them to flee their homelands, in which they've come here to America, to a place of new hope and new opportunity.
Together, we can use our collective platforms to say no to cultural and religious discrimination. We can guide the next generation in this pursuit by engaging them in dialogue to promote peace and reconciliation so that every person everywhere can live in thriving communities. Do you believe that? Will you take up the mantle of inclusion? Will you join us?
Okay, so I apologize for the Wi-Fi. It's always kind of tricky to show short films on Wi-Fi. It's really powerful if you watch it on YouTube or on just if you share it again with some of your friends. But I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that that kind of captured for you how in a very short amount of time you can tell a very compelling story. And we always try to get the women in our network to tell the stories themselves rather than just having an actor or a narrator. So Maria, the exciting thing about her film is it opens doors for our women also. The film is just a media tool. And what we found is that the films give women access then to expand their platform. They're able to get speaking engagements. Maria has been invited to like the Bill Gates Foundation to be a part of a program. She's been contacted by the US State Department for consulting and to give advice about various refugee programs. And so that's what's so exciting about the network is we're not just producing short films and teaching women about the benefits of religious freedom, but we found that once they submit a film and we showcase it, that it opens new doors for them because our films go all over the world. I also wanted to clarify that we provide training and coaching. So that film was pretty sophisticated. That's not something someone just kind of, produces over the weekend. And the way we do that is through our coaching and mentoring and our workshops. So for example, Maria didn't have a media background. She's running a nonprofit, but we sat with her, we helped her think about her script. We had her write it, and then we would come in and revise it. We have trained script writers help her revise it, make sure she has that wording in there that really has the thread of religious freedom around it. And then we asked her to find a volunteer videographer because we don't want people spending money on these films. Maybe you spend just a little bit on, buying lunch for someone, or, you know, maybe there's you need to travel somewhere across town and maybe there's, you know, gas, but really we want to, this should be a volunteer effort. So she was able to find a young man named Jude from Africa who had great videography skills. And they partnered together. She wrote the script, we coached her, he filmed it, he sent us his first draft, his second draft, his third draft. We helped him edit it, get it really, you know, down to the exact guidelines we needed. And they did it. And I think they filmed it like just in a weekend. So, you know, that's where we provide the coaching and training to come alongside you. So we always tell people, anyone can be a media producer. Not everyone can be a script writer or a videographer, editor. But if you have an idea for a film and you can write that out, even just in one paragraph, and you want to send that to us, we could give you ideas about how to turn that into a script, a 3 to 4 minute script. We have samples of scripts that you can look at, like how do you write out a script? And then you have a shot list. A shot list is the images that you want to show in your film. And as one of our script writers says, she works in Los Angeles, Hollywood level script writer, she encourages people just to simply like visualize the story. Just like imagine, like, what would you want your audience to see? And then maybe storyboard it with little boxes. And then once you've done that, you kind of write your paragraph. And then once you write your paragraph, then you can move that over to a script, which shows, you know, how you start the film, the middle, the end, and then the images that you want to show. And then you recruit your team. Your team could be a real script writer who can write it for you. Your team could be the videographer. Your team could be a really good editor. Your team could be someone who's really good with music and sound, and you want to incorporate that. Usually videographers can do all of that. And it's really a volunteer effort. So we've seen just one person, it could be just one woman or man who has an idea, and they put it out to their network, you know, through Facebook or their colleagues or their church or, you know, their social community. And they say, I want to join this film competition. It's got big cash prizes. We have our first place winner wins $3,000. Our second place gets $1,500, and our third place gets $500. But in addition to that, the films, regardless if you win or not, the top films are released through a press release all over the world. And that's something you could put in your resume or share with your community that you joined the Religious Freedom Film Competition. And then, you know, it's a very respected project. So I wanted to encourage you to realize you don't have to be a professional videographer to join this effort. You just need a good idea. So to show you another idea, we're going to go to another film, which is an animation, and it's called District 18. I don't want to give it away too much, but it's based on Article 18. And this was an Iranian filmmaker who is an aspiring animator. And I'll let the story speak for itself. So let's go ahead and run that. All right. Well, good. I hope that gave you just inspiration to see that there's a lot of different ways you can approach religious freedom stories. That one was a little bit, more complicated because it required animation. But then again, Moral contacted us and said, I want to create an animation, but I don't know how to do it. So we had her think about a very simple storyline, just write that paragraph out. And then we came in and just helped her kind of tease out that story until you have what you had at the end, which I think is brilliant. And she won the grand prize 2 years ago for that film. And Dr. Brian Grimm in particular, who's a sponsor, was so excited to share that film with his networks of business leaders around the world, because he felt like anyone anywhere could watch that, and then you could have a discussion about it later. Want to take again a moment to ask if there's any questions about the film competition. Does it interest you? Is this something you might think about doing? Do you have any questions about that? You guys could even do it as a fellowship. It could be a team effort. It doesn't have to be just an individual.
I have one question. I know our media, and you said you've kind of been moving more to the live what you believe more generally. So are the films supposed to be just more focused on that general concept and helping people understand religious freedom, or are you looking for sort of that to tie to gender equality as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. So historically, we have given prizes to the films that clearly had that religious freedom and women's empowerment message. So you kind of saw that in the two films, but you also saw how Maria's film as a female leader is serving her community refugees, right? And we've also had some films that address disabled people or minorities. So if you go to our website, there's a page that says film competition and our guidelines. And so we're looking for films that have a strong religious freedom message, but you can show the intersection of women's rights, but you can also show how it's good for the disabled community or the displaced community. And so our sponsor has said those are the kinds of films that interest them, and that's how, what they're willing to give cash prizes to. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. They typically tend to be the intersection of women's rights and religious freedom. But if you have a heart for displaced people or refugees and then disabled people, we could help you think about your storyline for that. Does that help?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Good. Yeah. And then also on our website, if you just tool around, you'll see like media training, and then there's a tab for media resources. And on there, we have things like this booklet, which was created by the Stephanus Alliance. This is a really great little booklet that is just like 30 pages, and it gives you case studies and little scenarios of why religious freedom is so important for women around the world. And so if you're like, I can't really think of a story, you could read this booklet, and it might inspire you to think of a storyline that you might want to use. And also on our website, we have tons of like resources. So if you want to know how to write a script or a shot list is just the images you want to show, like B-roll or photographs. And we walk you through the process of creating your script, and there's homework and different things. We usually use that for our media training, like fellowship, but those resources are free to anyone. So you could go there and even just, start investigating some of our tools and use that to start drafting your ideas. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Where do you target sending these, advertising that you have this opportunity? Do you take it to colleges and universities and their film school departments? And are you specifically targeting marginalized demographics and minorities to do those filmings rather than perhaps a Caucasian community?
Yeah, both are really good questions. So we typically advertise just through our networks. We're a small network ourselves, so we don't have the bandwidth to, canvass universities and film departments. But thankfully, in the last few years, we're like going into our 5th year of the film competition. We have our newsletter, and then Dr. Brian Grimm sends out a press release. And so the word is getting out, enough that we can get enough films every year to make it an interesting film competition. But certainly we welcome it. So if if you're a student at BYU or Grinnell and you want to take this back to your campus or your film department, BYU has a really good film program, by the way. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's one of the best in the world. And so, and I say that because I'm in Los Angeles and we've seen the films that have come out of BYU. And, if you wanted to take this back and ask if there's one person or 2 or 3 people that want to run with this, it's very, very possible, very doable. And then your other question was about minorities. So typically what we do is if you are a Caucasian person, and you have a heart for this story, but you would like to partner maybe with a minority person, we could maybe try to connect you with women in our network, or we would encourage you to just find a story that represents a minority person. Maybe it's just an article you read or a link or a story you heard, or maybe you met someone and you think, I want to tell their story. And so you would partner up with them. You'd be the media producer, and then we call them the storyteller or the talent. So you would have the vision and you would kind of drive that project, but the lens would be on them versus you. But you could have, if you wanted to be in your film, it could be you telling the story and then introducing the minority person. So there's lots of different angles, because that's powerful too. If you see, let's say, a successful white businesswoman who is now hiring minorities and showing religious freedom in the workplace, and then those people are all shown on camera with interviews, that would be powerful. And that's what we're doing in Pakistan, because the majority religion there is Islam, right? Muslim. And so we're encouraging people to interview Muslims who are hiring Christians or Hindus or non-believers, and how they're demonstrating in a positive way religious freedom in Pakistan. So it just depends on what your majority culture is. If you're in Utah and you have a majority culture there, you might show how someone is hiring someone who is different than themselves. The other thing I need to make this clear is for Dr. Brian Grimm's award, he wants to show how religious freedom is good in the business world. So that's why I'm talking about hiring. Like if you were to show how religious freedom is good for business and thriving economies, also, then there's a higher chance that you could win that prize. So again, that's on our website, those guidelines. I didn't talk about it as much today, but if you can show there's a connection with strong economies, which is true, the countries in the world that have the strongest economies, other than China, typically have very strong religious freedom laws that protect everyone's religious freedom. So you look at like Northern Europe, the US, they have really strong economies, and it's because they keep their doors open and they allow everyone to come to the table and contribute. Any other questions? I'm putting on my glasses to look in the chat box. Okay. Rachel, do you have any thoughts for a film for your group, or?
Yeah, we had a training last month kind of talking about some partnerships that ambassadors could create in our network. So we're finalizing a lot of those details. This is the culminating training for the brainstorm part of that process. But our goal as an ambassadorship is to at least submit one video to the competition.
That would be great.
So I'll be helping to facilitate some of the partnerships that the ambassadors set up and initiate. So we're really excited to participate and be part of it. And thank you so much for your presentation on everything that you're doing. I'm familiar with your work, and I think I definitely take for granted how innovative you are. So I always love hearing the refresher, and I know for our ambassadors, you've really opened their minds to how media is not just an effective tool, but in my humble opinion, the most effective tool for sharing positive stories and illustrating, modeling what freedom of religion or belief looks like around the world. So if you're okay, Shirin, I will have any ambassadors who have further questions reach out to you directly. Is that okay?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. In fact, we are asking people if they can submit that paragraph or that script idea in March, early March, because it usually takes, anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to really, finalize your idea and to find a videographer. And then the submission deadline is June 1st. But really, it only takes like a weekend to film something. If you're doing animation, it may take longer, but if you have a strong script, it can go pretty fast creating a short film. So if you're interested, contact us in March or sooner and share your idea with us. And we're willing to go back and forth with you until you perfect that idea.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll send all of those details out to the other 25 ambassadors that are in other time zones, and we will follow up. We're excited by everything you've shared today. Any other questions related to gender equality or the other work that Shirin has mentioned?
What other types of projects do you do, Shirin, besides the film?
Yeah, so I manage the big three initiatives are the film competition, which may not sound like a lot, but it is a lot because you have all these filmmakers contacting us, and then I connect them with our mentors to help them produce those films. I manage our e-course, which now I said we had almost 3,000 people who registered. So we give a certificate of completion. So they go online and do it, but then we have to follow up. And excitingly, a lot of those people will contact us and say, what else can we do? Like we did the e-course, we want more. So now we're setting up live workshops in Pakistan where we're sending women out into the community to do live workshops. So managing that. And then managing our fellowship. So like Rachel, we have a fellowship of 20 to 30 young women we meet every month, and they have homework and assignments. So between those three projects, pretty busy. It is what it is. And then the last hat I probably wear like Rachel is I try to connect with leaders and decision makers around the world to advocate for using media to advance religious freedom. So like attending the IRF roundtable or just, a networking events and being a spokesperson for women media advocates. And it's been fun. In the first few years, people would look at me and go, what do you do? I remember meeting Greg Mitchell like 4 years ago, Rachel, and I was sitting at a table and I could tell he was really hungry. He came over, he sat right at my table. And it was just the two of us. I was like, oh my goodness, this is Greg Mitchell. This is like a big deal. He leads the Religious Freedom Roundtable. And I gave him my card. Hi, I'm Shirin Taber with Empower Women Media. We help women tell their religious freedom stories through media. And he's like, what? So, but now 4 years later, he gets the vision and he's like, yep, we need more of this. We need more stories. We need more media. And the conferences are good. And the networking part's good, but we got to have tools to get this message out. So I'll end with that note. Hopefully that was inspiring.
Very inspiring. Really excited to see what our ambassadors come up with and produce for the competition, and excited to see where the Bellwether Empower Women Media partnership continues to grow. There's so much possibility for our overlap in missions and vision. So thank you again, Shirin, for being here, for who you are, for the work you do, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Nice to meet you.